Now let's begin. The Tuesday morning rain hammered against the classroom windows as Art Conrad watched his students hunched over their chessboards, their young faces twisted in concentration. He moved between the tables silently, observing, occasionally stopping to point out a missed opportunity or a brilliant defensive position. This was his element, the quiet strategy, the long game, the patience required to see 10 moves ahead. Mr. Conrad, checkmate. A freckled boy named Timothy raised his hand triumphantly. Art approached the board and studied it for 3 seconds. You left your queen exposed 2 moves ago. Your opponent just didn't see it. Never celebrate until the board is clear. He reset the pieces with practiced efficiency. Again, his phone buzzed in his pocket. The screen showed a text from Darlene, running late. Can you pick up Emily at 6 instead of 5? Mom's place. Art's jaw tightened as he typed back, fine. 3 years since the divorce, and Darlene still treated him like an inconvenience rather than their daughter's father. The custody arrangement gave him Emily every other weekend and Wednesday nights, a schedule that felt more like visiting privileges than actual parenthood. But he'd learned to work within the constraints, to be strategic. Losing his temper in family court had cost him once before. The final bell rang at 3:15. Art gathered his chess sets, locked his classroom, and drove his decade-old Honda Civic across town to his apartment, a modest 2-bedroom in a neighborhood that had seen better days. The second bedroom was Emily's, decorated with posters of chess grandmasters and constellations. She'd inherited his analytical mind and her mother's stubborn determination, a combination that made her exceptional at 9 years old. He spent the afternoon preparing her favorite meal, homemade mac and cheese with the fancy Gruyere she loved, and reviewing case files from his side work. Before becoming a teacher, Art had spent 7 years as a criminal psychologist, specializing in behavioral analysis and pattern recognition. He'd left that career after Emily was born, wanting something with better hours and less exposure to humanity's darkest corners. But he still consulted occasionally, helping defense attorneys understand the psychological profiles of their clients. It kept his skills sharp and supplemented his teacher's salary. The case on his desk involved a string of seemingly random burglaries across 3 counties. The police had missed the pattern, but Art saw it immediately. The thief always struck on nights when local high school football games drew crowds away from residential areas. He typed up his analysis and emailed it to the attorney who'd hired him, then checked the time. 5:47 p.m. Rose McClure's house sat in an upscale neighborhood 40 minutes away, a sprawling Tudor-style mansion that had belonged to Darlene's late father. Rose had inherited everything when he died 8 years ago: the house, the money, the social connections. She'd never worked a day in her life, sustained by old money and the careful investments of her deceased husband. Darlene had grown up in privilege, which made their marriage doomed from the start. Art came from nothing, built everything through scholarships and determination, and Rose had never let him forget that he wasn't good enough for her daughter. The drive took longer than usual due to an accident on the highway. Art's fingers drummed against the steering wheel as he sat in traffic, watching the clock tick past 6. His phone rang. Darlene. Where are you? Her voice carried that sharp edge he'd learned to recognize as barely controlled anger. Traffic. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Mom's not feeling well. She needs to lie down. Can't you ever be on time? Art counted to 3 before responding. The text said 6. It's 6:12. She hung up without responding. When he finally pulled onto Rosewood Lane, the sun had begun its descent, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns and expensive cars. Rose's house loomed at the end of the cul-de-sac, its dark windows reflecting the dying light. Art had always found something unsettling about the place, though he'd never been able to articulate exactly what. Maybe it was too perfect, too controlled, like a museum rather than a home. He parked in the circular driveway and walked to the front door, noting the security cameras positioned at every corner, an upgrade Rose had installed 2 years ago. The doorbell echoed inside, and after a moment, Darlene appeared. She looked tired, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her makeup slightly smeared. She's in the den with Mom, Darlene said without preamble, not meeting his eyes. Playing some game. Everything okay? Art asked, studying her face. Fine. Why wouldn't it be? Because you look terrified, Art thought, but didn't say. Instead, he stepped inside, noting how Darlene positioned herself between him and the rest of the house, as if guarding something. "I'll get her," Darlene said quickly. "Wait here." But Art was already moving past her, following the sound of laughter down the hall. The den was Rose's sanctuary, a room filled with antique furniture and expensive artwork. Emily sat on the floor surrounded by other children, 4 of them, ranging in age from about 7 to 12. They were focused on an elaborate board game Art didn't recognize, with strange symbols and pieces that looked hand-carved. "Daddy!" Emily jumped up and hugged him. But there was something off about her enthusiasm, a practiced quality that reminded him of actors in commercials. Rose McClure stood by the fireplace, a tall woman in her late 60s with silver hair and the kind of cold elegance that suggested breeding and money. She smiled at Art with all the warmth of a snake. "Arthur, how lovely to see you." "It's Art," he corrected automatically, then looked at the other children. "I didn't know Emily had friends over." "Oh, these are children from my charitable work," Rose said smoothly. "I mentor them, give them opportunities they wouldn't otherwise have. You understand about giving back, don't you, Arthur? Or is that still a foreign concept?" Art ignored the barb and focused on Emily. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" Her smile faltered for just a moment, a micro-expression he caught because he'd been trained to catch such things. Fear, quickly masked, but definitely fear. "Can I stay a little longer?" Emily asked, her voice carrying a pleading note that seemed almost rehearsed. "We're right in the middle of the game." "Your father drove all this way," Rose interjected, though her tone suggested she wished he hadn't. "Run along and get your things, dear." Emily obeyed, but Art noticed how she glanced back at the other children, at Rose, with an expression he couldn't quite read. The other kids hadn't looked up from their game, moving pieces with an intensity that seemed unusual for children their age. While Emily gathered her backpack, Art studied the game board more closely. The symbols resembled nothing he'd seen before. Not chess, not Go, not any commercial game. They looked almost ancient, ritualistic. "What game is that?" he asked Rose. "Just something I created," she replied, her voice clipped. "I believe in stimulating young minds. Unlike the public school system, which seems content to let children rot in front of screens." Another dig at his profession. Art let it slide. He'd learned long ago that engaging with Rose only gave her ammunition. Emily returned with her backpack, hugged Rose goodbye with what seemed like genuine affection, and followed Art to the car. Once they were buckled in and driving away, Art glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. "You like going to Grandma Rose's house, don't you?" "I love it there," Emily said immediately. "She's teaching me so much. Important things." "What kind of things?" Emily's reflection met his eyes in the mirror. "How to be special. How to see patterns other people miss. She says I have a gift, like you do, Daddy. She says people like us are meant for greater things." A chill ran down Art's spine, though he couldn't explain why. "What do you mean, people like us?" But Emily had already turned to look out the window, humming a tune Art didn't recognize, something discordant and strange that made his teeth ache. That night, after Emily had fallen asleep in her room, Art sat at his desk and opened his laptop. Something about the afternoon nagged at him, a feeling he'd learned to trust during his years as a criminal psychologist. He started with a simple search, Rose McClure charity work. The results were extensive. Rose had founded something called the Nexus Foundation 12 years ago, shortly after her husband's death. According to their website, the foundation identified and mentored gifted children from disadvantaged backgrounds, providing them with educational opportunities and enrichment programs. Testimonials from grateful parents filled the site, praising Rose's dedication and generosity. Art dug deeper, searching for tax records and financial statements. The foundation had assets worth millions, funded primarily by Rose's personal wealth and donations from other wealthy families. Everything looked legitimate on the surface, but Art's instinct screamed that something was wrong. He pulled up old case files from his criminal psychology days, looking for patterns that might match what he'd observed. Cult recruitment often targeted children, focusing on those who were intelligent but vulnerable. The isolation, the special treatment, the emphasis on being chosen or gifted, these were classic grooming techniques. But Rose was his ex-wife's mother, a pillar of the community, a woman who'd never shown any interest in anything beyond social status and maintaining her wealth. Why would she suddenly devote herself to children? Art's phone buzzed with a text from his colleague, Detective Curtis Cole, someone he'd worked with during his psychology days, got a weird one. 3 missing kids reports in the past month, all from wealthy families. Parents say kids ran away to fulfill their purpose. Mean anything to you? Art's blood went cold. He typed back, "Tell me more." Curtis called instead of texting. All 3 kids were part of some mentorship program run by a local foundation. Parents thought it was legitimate, scholarships, private tutoring, the works. Then the kids started acting strange. Secretive, talking about being special, being chosen for something important. One day, they just vanished. What foundation? Art asked, though he already knew. Something called Nexus, run by a woman named Rose McClure. You know her? Art closed his eyes. She's my ex-wife's mother. Curtis, my daughter is in that program. The line went silent for a long moment. Art, I need you to bring Emily in. Let me talk to her. Not yet. If we spook Rose, she might. He stopped, not wanting to voice his worst fears. Give me a few days to gather information. I'll keep Emily close. If Rose is running some kind of operation, we need evidence before we move. 48 hours, Curtis said. Then I'm coming to you, with or without permission. Art spent the next day teaching his classes on autopilot, his mind churning through possibilities. After school, instead of going home, he drove to the public library and used their computers to research the Nexus Foundation more thoroughly. What he found made his hands shake. 12 years ago, Rose had traveled extensively through Eastern Europe and Asia, visiting remote monasteries and religious sites. She'd returned changed, according to old social media posts from Darlene, more focused, more purposeful. Within months, she'd established the foundation and began recruiting children. The pattern Art discovered in the foundation's records was subtle but undeniable. Every 5 years, a group of children who'd been in the program would suddenly leave, parents reporting they'd gone to elite boarding schools or special universities abroad. But Art found no records of these institutions. The children simply vanished from public records, as if they'd never existed. 23 children in total over 12 years, all between the ages of 9 and 14. All described by their parents as gifted, special, chosen. Art's daughter was 9 years old. He drove home, picked up Emily from the after-school program, and tried to act normal over dinner. But Emily was quiet, pushing her mac and cheese around her plate. "Daddy," she said finally, "are you going to try to stop me?" Art set down his fork. "Stop you from what, sweetheart?" "From ascending. Grandma Rose says parents sometimes try to interfere because they don't understand. But you're smart. You see patterns. You know I'm meant for more than this." She gestured around the modest apartment. "More than ordinary life. Emily, whatever Grandma Rose told you, she didn't just tell me. She showed me." Emily's eyes held a fervor that terrified him. "There are others like us, Daddy. People who can see beyond the normal world. We're being prepared for something important. In 3 days, I'll join the others. I'll finally be complete." Art's heart hammered in his chest. 3 days. Where are you going? I can't tell you. But I wanted you to know that I love you, and I'm not running away. I'm running toward my purpose. Art reached across the table and took his daughter's small hands in his. "Emily, listen to me very carefully. Whatever Rose told you, whatever she showed you, it's not real. She's manipulating you. She said you'd say that." Emily pulled her hands away, tears streaming down her face. "She said people who can't see will always try to keep us small. But I don't want to be small anymore, Daddy. I want to be special." "You are special," Art insisted. "You don't need Rose McClure to tell you that." But Emily had already stood up and walked to her room, closing the door behind her with a quiet finality that felt like a goodbye. Art called Curtis immediately. "We can't wait. Whatever's happening, it's happening in 3 days. Emily says she's leaving to ascend with the others. I'll get a warrant for Rose McClure's house. We'll go in tomorrow morning. What if the other children are there? What if we're wrong? Then we apologize and move on. But Art, if you're right about this, we can't afford to wait." That night, Art didn't sleep. He sat at his desk, going through everything he'd learned, trying to understand Rose's endgame. The money trail led to offshore accounts and shell corporations, but the financial records revealed something interesting. Rose had purchased a large property in rural Virginia 2 years ago, a former monastery that had been converted into a private retreat center. The property was registered under one of her shell companies, but Art recognized the address from an old photograph he'd found in the foundation's archived files. This was where the children were taken. This was the endpoint of Rose's 12-year operation. Art spent the early morning hours trying to convince Emily to talk to him, but she remained locked in her room, silent and resolute. He finally fell asleep at his desk around 4 a.m., his head resting on case files and printouts. His phone woke him at 7:15 a.m., Curtis calling. "We're moving now." Federal warrant came through. FBI is taking point because this crosses state lines. They want you there to identify Emily if she's inside. Art's stomach dropped. FBI. Whatever Rose McClure is running, it's bigger than missing kids. Meet me at the command post 2 blocks from her house. 30 minutes. Art woke Emily and explained they needed to go back to Grandma Rose's house. She smiled, a strange, serene expression that didn't belong on a 9-year-old's face. "It's okay, Daddy," she said. "You'll understand soon. When you see what we've become, you'll want to join us." The drive to Rose's neighborhood felt surreal, like moving through a nightmare. When Art reached Rosewood Lane, he found the street blocked by black SUVs and unmarked sedans. Men and women in FBI windbreakers swarmed the area, setting up barriers and coordinating through radios. Curtis met him at the barricade, his expression grim. "Art, before you go in there, you need to know, we've been monitoring Rose McClure for 6 months. The case is bigger than we thought. We have evidence she's been running a recruitment operation for an international organization. We don't know their full purpose yet, but the children who've disappeared, some of them have turned up dead. Others have been found in other countries, completely brainwashed, unable to remember their families." Art felt like he'd been punched. "And you're just telling me this now? We didn't know about your connection to her until yesterday. When you called, I pulled the file. Art, your daughter is on their target list. She's been marked as a potential recruit for over a year." Before Art could respond, one of the FBI agents approached, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an air of command. "Mr. Conrad? I'm Special Agent Sonia Morrison. I understand your daughter is inside the residence." "Yes, Emily. She's 9. Rose McClure is her grandmother." Agent Morrison exchanged a glance with Curtis. "Sir, I need you to stay here. We're going to breach the house and extract all children present. If your daughter is there, we'll bring her out safely." "How many children are in there?" "We believe there are 7, including Emily. Rose McClure is inside, along with 2 associates." She consulted her notes. "Vera McDonald and Merle Potts. Both have backgrounds in psychology and were flagged by Interpol for involvement in a similar operation in Germany 10 years ago." Art's mind raced. 7 children. 3 adults. This was the final recruitment phase before they transported the kids to Virginia. What's their objective? What are they preparing these children for? Agent Morrison hesitated. "Mr. Conrad, the organization Rose works for, they believe they're creating the next evolution of humanity. Children with specific psychological profiles are identified, groomed, and then subjected to an intensive program designed to break down their sense of self and rebuild them as members of a collective consciousness. It's a cult, but more sophisticated than anything we've seen before. The children who survive the process become completely devoted to the organization's goals. Those who don't." She didn't finish. Art felt sick. "You're telling me my daughter could die in there. We're telling you that we need to act now, before they transport her. Once these children enter the Virginia compound, we lose jurisdiction and they disappear completely." An agent's radio crackled to life. "All units, we have movement inside. Target 1 is heading to the basement." Agent Morrison barked orders, and the tactical team moved toward the house. Art started forward, but Curtis grabbed his arm. "You can't go in there. Let them do their job. That's my daughter." The front door of Rose's house opened, and Art's breath caught. Emily stood in the doorway, alone, her small figure backlit by the house's interior lights. She looked directly at Art, even though she couldn't possibly see him from that distance. "Daddy," she called out, her voice carrying across the lawn. "You can't stop this. We're already gone." Agent Morrison raised her hand, signaling the team to hold. "Emily, we're here to help you. Come toward us, sweetheart." Walk slowly. But Emily didn't move. Instead, she smiled, that same serene, unsettling expression, and 6 other children filed out of the house behind her. They formed a line on the front porch, holding hands, their faces blank and calm. "Jesus Christ," Curtis muttered. "They're staging a mass suicide." Art broke free and ran toward the house. "Emily, don't." Gunshots exploded from inside the house, 3 rapid cracks that shattered the tense silence. The children scattered, some falling to the ground, others running back inside. Art saw Emily disappear through the doorway, and he didn't hesitate. He sprinted across the lawn as the FBI team rushed the house. Inside, chaos reigned. Agents shouted conflicting orders, searching rooms and securing the first floor. Art followed the sounds of crying to the basement stairs, descending into a space that shouldn't have existed in a residential home. The basement had been converted into something that looked like a classroom, a laboratory, and a temple combined. The walls were covered in the same strange symbols he'd seen on the board game, but these were larger, more intricate, painted with what looked like metallic ink. In the center of the room stood Rose McClure, a gun in her hand, blood spreading across her shoulder from a wound. 2 bodies lay on the floor, Vera McDonald and Merle Potts, both dead from apparent suicide. Emily and the 6 other children huddled in the corner, their eyes wide with terror now. The serene masks finally cracked. "Stay back, Arthur," Rose said, her voice weak but steady. She pointed the gun not at him, but at the children. "You've ruined everything. 12 years of preparation. These children were meant to transcend, to become something greater than your pathetic, limited existence." Art raised his hands, his psychology training kicking in automatically. "Rose, put the gun down. Whatever you believe, these children deserve to choose their own path." "Choice." Rose laughed, a brittle sound edged with madness. "You think what we offer is slavery? We offer them purpose, power, connection to something beyond their individual suffering. You've spent your whole life seeing patterns, Arthur. Can't you see that humanity is broken? We're creating something better. By kidnapping children and brainwashing them, that's not evolution. That's abuse." Rose's hand trembled. "My husband understood. Before he died, he made me promise to continue the work. The collective gave us Emily, placed her in our family specifically because of her potential. She was meant to lead the next generation." Art's blood ran cold. "What do you mean, they gave us Emily? You think your marriage to Darlene was coincidence? That Emily was just born naturally into our family? The collective has eyes everywhere. They identified you as someone with the right genetic profile, the right psychological markers. Darlene was instructed to seduce you, to bear a child. Emily is the result of careful planning." Behind Rose, Agent Morrison and her team had entered through a second basement entrance. Art saw them taking position, weapons trained on Rose, but he held up his hand, signaling them to wait. "If Emily is so important to you, why would you threaten her now? Because incomplete transcendence is worse than death. If I can't deliver all 7 children, the collective will consider this operation a failure. They'll eliminate everyone involved, including me. If I can't give them perfection, I'll give them nothing." Art took a step forward. "Or you could choose a third option." Rose's eyes narrowed. "What option?" "You could tell us everything. Location of the Virginia compound, names of everyone in the collective, their operational structure. You could help us dismantle the entire organization." "And why would I do that?" "Because you're wounded and surrounded. Because those children in the corner just watched you murder 2 women. Because 12 years ago, you lost your husband and fell into a cult's manipulation, and part of you, the real Rose McClure, not the zealot they created, knows this is wrong." For a moment, Art saw something flicker in Rose's eyes, doubt, or maybe recognition. Her gun hand lowered slightly. Then Emily stood up. "Grandma Rose," she said, her voice small and frightened and finally sounding like a 9-year-old. "I don't want to ascend. I want to go home. I want my daddy." The gun clattered to the floor. Rose collapsed to her knees, her facade crumbling completely as she sobbed. "I'm sorry. God, I'm so sorry. What have I done?" The FBI team moved in, securing Rose and checking on the children. Art rushed to Emily and pulled her into his arms, feeling her small body shake with sobs. "I've got you," he whispered. "You're safe now. I've got you." But as Agent Morrison read Rose her rights and paramedics arrived to treat the wounded, Art knew this was far from over. The collective Rose mentioned was still out there. Emily had been targeted since before her birth, and somewhere, people were planning how to recover from this failure. Art held his daughter tighter, his mind already working through the implications, already seeing the patterns. This wasn't an ending. This was just the beginning of understanding how deep the conspiracy went. The FBI field office in downtown smelled of burnt coffee and recycled air. Art sat in a conference room with Emily sleeping on a couch nearby, covered with his jacket, while Agent Morrison debriefed him for the third time in 6 hours. Curtis stood by the window, arms crossed, watching the sun set over the city. "Let me make sure I understand," Agent Morrison said, reviewing her notes. "Rose McClure claims your entire marriage to Darlene Huffman was engineered by this organization." That's what she said before she lawyered up. Art rubbed his face, exhaustion pulling at him. "But it doesn't make sense. Darlene and I met at a university chess tournament 15 years ago. I was there coaching a high school team. She was competing independently. There was no setup, no manipulation. It was random. According to Rose, nothing about your life has been random." Agent Morrison slid a folder across the table. "We pulled your complete background. Want to hear something interesting? That chess tournament? Sponsored by the Nexus Foundation. It was one of their first events, 3 months after Rose founded it." Art opened the folder, his hands suddenly cold. Inside were photographs, him at various ages, beginning from when he was 16, playing chess at regional competitions, graduating from college, presenting research papers on criminal psychology. Each photo was marked with dates and locations, along with detailed notes about his psychological profile, his achievements, his capabilities. "They've been watching you since you were a teenager," Curtis said quietly. "Art, you were the target all along." "But why? I'm nobody special." Agent Morrison pulled out another document. "Actually, you are. Your IQ test from high school placed you in the 99.9th percentile. Your pattern recognition abilities are off the charts. Your psychological profile suggests you have a rare combination of analytical thinking and emotional intelligence." According to the notes in Rose's files, the collective specifically wanted a child born from someone with your genetic and psychological markers combined with Darlene's family bloodline. Darlene's family bloodline? Art looked up sharply. "You're saying her family is part of this?" Rose's husband, Walter McClure, was a founding member of the collective back in the 1980s. Darlene's lineage traces back to several prominent members. The organization appears to believe in selective breeding, creating children with specific traits that make them easier to recruit and indoctrinate. Art felt like the room was spinning. "Does Darlene know? We're bringing her in now." "My guess? No." Rose kept her daughter separate from the operation. Darlene was just a tool to create Emily. Once Emily was born, Rose probably planned to slowly indoctrinate her without Darlene interfering. That's why Rose encouraged the divorce, Art realized. She wanted Darlene and me separated so she could have more access to Emily. Exactly. Agent Morrison leaned forward. "Mr. Conrad, we need your help. Rose has been cooperating, to a point. She's given us some information about the Virginia compound and named a few local members. But she's holding back critical details about the collective's leadership and their true goals. We think she's afraid of them. What do you want from me? You're a criminal psychologist. You know how to read people, how to get them to reveal information they don't want to share. We need you to interview Rose. Build rapport. Get her to tell us everything." Art looked at Emily sleeping on the couch, her face finally peaceful. "And if I refuse? Then the collective continues operating. They'll target other children, other families. And they'll eventually come for Emily again, because according to Rose, she's special even among their recruits. She has something they desperately want." Curtis moved from the window. "Art, I know this is asking a lot, but you're the best behavioral analyst I've ever worked with. If anyone can break through Rose's defenses, it's you." Art stood and walked to Emily, gently brushing hair from her face. She stirred but didn't wake. He'd spent his entire adult life trying to protect her, and he'd failed to see the threat living right inside their family. "When do I start?" he asked. The interrogation room was sterile and cold, designed to be uncomfortable. Rose McClure sat across the metal table, her shoulder bandaged, her silver hair disheveled. She'd been charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, attempted murder, and a host of other crimes. She was looking at life in prison, minimum. But when Art entered the room, she smiled. "Hello, Arthur. I wondered when they'd bring you in." Art sat down, keeping his expression neutral. "The FBI says you're cooperating, but holding back information. They thought I might be able to persuade you. Because you're so good at understanding people?" Rose's smile widened. "You still don't see it, do you? You still don't understand why the collective chose you specifically. Why don't you explain it to me?" Rose leaned back in her chair, wincing slightly from her injury. "The collective has existed in various forms for centuries. Different names, different structures, but the same core mission: to identify and cultivate human potential beyond normal limitations. We're not a cult, Arthur. We're the next stage of human evolution. You murdered 2 women and threatened to kill 7 children. That's not evolution. That's mass murder. Vera and Merle chose transcendence over capture. They understood that incomplete transformation is worse than death. And I didn't threaten the children. I was protecting them from a half-finished process that would have left them psychologically damaged. Art opened the folder he'd brought, laying out photographs of the 23 children who disappeared from the Nexus Foundation over the past 12 years. Tell me about these kids. Where are they now? Rose's expression softened as she looked at the photos. Most are in the Virginia compound, completing their training. 3 were transferred to our European facilities. 2. She paused. 2 didn't survive the transcendence process. Their minds couldn't handle the transformation. You killed 2 children. We tried to help them become something greater. They simply weren't compatible. Art wanted to lunge across the table, but he forced himself to remain calm. And Emily? What makes her so special that you'd engineer her very existence? Rose's eyes gleamed with something like pride. Emily has something we've only seen once before. She can perceive patterns across multiple dimensions of thought simultaneously. Most humans process information linearly. A leads to B leads to C. Emily processes information spherically. She sees all possibilities at once, all connections, all outcomes. Combined with her genetic predisposition for the collective's work, she's quite possibly the most valuable recruit we've ever identified. She's 9 years old. She's a miracle. Rose leaned forward. Arthur, I know you hate me. I understand why. But consider this. Emily will never be happy in a normal life. She's too intelligent, too aware, too capable. The regular world will bore her, frustrate her, limit her. We're offering her something better, a community of minds like hers, working toward genuine human advancement. By kidnapping and brainwashing children. By identifying exceptional individuals before the world crushes their potential. Rose's voice took on an evangelical fervor. You've worked in criminal psychology. You've seen how society treats gifted people who don't fit the mold. They're medicated, ostracized, told to be normal. We celebrate them. We give them purpose. Art realized this was the core of Rose's indoctrination. She genuinely believed the collective was helping. Walter McClure had recruited her by appealing to her ego and her grief, convincing her that she was part of something noble. Tell me about Walter, Art said, changing tactics. How did he recruit you? Rose's expression flickered, a moment of vulnerability. Walter was dying. Pancreatic cancer. The doctors gave him 6 months. He used that time to show me the truth about the collective, about what we could accomplish together. He said I had a gift for identifying potential in children, that I could continue his legacy. So you started the Nexus Foundation. 3 months after he died. It was his dying wish. He made me promise to find 7 perfect candidates for the next phase of the collective's evolution. Children who could be molded into something extraordinary. Rose's eyes found Art's. Emily was supposed to be the 7th. You arriving with the FBI ruined 12 years of careful work. Good, Art said flatly. Tell me about the Virginia compound. How many people are there? What's the layout? I've already given Agent Morrison basic information. The rest, I can't tell you. Can't or won't. Both. Rose's face went pale. The collective has protocols. If I reveal too much, they'll assume I've been compromised and eliminate everyone connected to this operation. That includes Darlene. That includes other family members you don't even know are involved. Art's blood chilled. What family members? Rose smiled sadly. You have a younger sister, don't you? Cecilia. Works as a pediatric nurse in Ohio. Married to a man named Trevor Forbes. They have 2 children, ages 7 and 5. Art's hands clenched into fists. He hadn't seen Cecilia in 3 years, their relationship strained after their parents died. But the thought of the collective targeting her children. You're lying. Am I? The collective has extensive networks. They identify families with the right genetic markers and track them for generations. Your sister's children are already on their radar. If I cooperate too fully with the FBI, the collective will accelerate their recruitment timeline. Agent Morrison had been watching from behind the one-way glass. She entered the room now, her expression grim. We need to talk, she said to Art. In the hallway, Morrison pulled up a file on her tablet. She's telling the truth. We've been monitoring communications from the Virginia compound. They know Rose was arrested. They're already implementing contingency protocols, which includes targeting family members of anyone who might compromise the operation. Then we need to protect Cecilia and her family. We're sending agents to Ohio now. But Mr. Conrad, this is bigger than your sister. The collective has cells in 14 countries that we know of, hundreds of members. If we raid the Virginia compound without proper intelligence, we might trigger a widespread response that puts thousands of children at risk. Art's mind raced, analyzing angles and possibilities. Rose is afraid of the collective's leadership. She believes they'll retaliate against her family if she talks. But what if we could offer her something they can't? Like what? Witness protection for Darlene. A reduced sentence in a minimum security facility. Most importantly, a chance to actually help the children she claims to care about. Art met Morrison's eyes. Rose bought into the collective's ideology, but part of her broke when Emily asked to go home. That moment of doubt is what we exploit. We convince her that the best way to protect these children is to help us dismantle the entire organization. Morrison considered this. You think you can flip her? I think she's already flipped. She just doesn't realize it yet. Art returned to the interrogation room alone. Rose watched him warily as he sat down. I want to tell you a story, Art said, about a boy I evaluated during my psychology days. 11 years old, IQ over 160. He'd been recruited by a gang that recognized his tactical intelligence. They told him he was special, that he had talents the normal world would waste. They gave him purpose, made him feel valued. Let me guess, Rose interrupted. You saved him from the gang, put him back in the broken system, and he ended up medicated and ordinary. Actually, no. I helped him understand that being special doesn't mean you need to join something. It means you get to create something. Today, he's 18, studying mathematics at MIT, and building AI algorithms that predict natural disasters. He's saving actual lives, Rose. Not by joining a secret organization, but by using his gifts ethically and openly. Rose's expression remained skeptical. One success story doesn't negate. Emily asked to come home. Art interrupted. In that basement, when you had a gun pointed at her, she looked at you and said she wanted her daddy. Not transcendence. Not the collective. Just home. Just normal childhood. Just love. Rose's composure finally cracked. Tears streamed down her face. I know. God, I know. When I heard her say that, I realized. Walter was wrong. The collective is wrong. These children don't need to be transformed. They need to be children. Then help me stop them. If I do, the collective will kill people I care about. And if you don't, they'll continue destroying children's lives. You can't protect everyone, Rose. But you can choose which side of history you're on. Rose wiped her face with shaking hands. If I tell you everything, truly everything, the FBI has to protect Darlene. And Emily. Promise me that. I promise. Rose took a deep breath and began talking. She described the Virginia compound in detail, a converted monastery with underground facilities designed to hold up to 50 children at various stages of indoctrination. She named 17 high-ranking collective members, including a technology CEO, 2 senators, a federal judge, and the headmaster of an elite prep school. The collective's true goal, Rose explained, was to create a network of gifted individuals in positions of power across government, technology, and finance. These individuals would be psychologically conditioned to prioritize the collective's agenda over personal or national interests. It was a decades-long plan to essentially create a shadow government of enhanced minds. But there's a problem with their methodology, Rose said. The transformation process only works on about 60% of subjects. The rest either resist the conditioning or suffer psychological breaks. The collective sees this as acceptable losses. How many children have died? Art asked, his voice tight. I don't know exact numbers. But across all their global operations? Hundreds. Maybe thousands over the past 50 years. Agent Morrison had been feeding information to her team in real time. Within hours, the FBI had coordinated with international law enforcement to begin simultaneous raids on collective facilities worldwide. The Virginia compound would be the primary target, scheduled for early the next morning. Art was cleared to return home with Emily, accompanied by 2 federal marshals for protection. Darlene met them at his apartment, her face swollen from crying. I didn't know, she said the moment she saw Art. I swear to God, I didn't know what my mother was doing. I believe you, Art said, and he meant it. Darlene had been manipulated just as much as anyone else. They sat together in Art's living room. Three people connected by a child and shattered by revelations. Emily stayed close to Art, holding his hand, occasionally glancing at her mother with confusion. Mom, Emily said softly. Did Grandma Rose hurt other kids? Darlene struggled to find words. Yes, baby. She was very sick in her mind. She thought she was helping, but she was hurting people. Is she going to jail? Yes. Emily processed this silently, then looked up at Art. Daddy, am I still special? Or was that a lie too? Art knelt down to Emily's eye level. You are absolutely special. You're brilliant and kind and brave. But you don't need some secret organization to tell you that. And you definitely don't need to be transformed into something else. Who you are right now, that's already extraordinary. Emily hugged him tightly, and Art felt her small body relax for the first time in days. The next morning, Art watched the news coverage of the coordinated raids. The Virginia compound yielded 19 children, all of whom were being evaluated by psychologists and reunited with their families. 14 collective members were arrested, including the federal judge Rose had named. But as Art watched, he noticed something that made his analytical mind start churning. The technology CEO Rose had mentioned, a man named Tyler Miles, wasn't among those arrested. According to the news, he'd left the country 2 days before the raids, departing on a private jet for an undisclosed location. Art called Agent Morrison immediately. Tyler Miles wasn't at the compound. We know. He's on our international watch list, but he's currently in a country with no extradition treaty. We're working on it. Rose said he was one of the collective's main financial backers. If he's still free, he can rebuild the operation. Mr. Conrad, we've dismantled their primary infrastructure. Even if Miles tries to rebuild, it'll take years. But Art couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Tyler Miles was a billionaire with resources that dwarfed the FBI's budget. If he wanted to continue the collective's work, he could do it quietly, carefully, in ways that would take years to detect. Art spent the next week helping Emily adjust to therapy and trying to return to some semblance of normal life. He taught his chess classes, met with Curtis to review the ongoing investigation, and tried to ignore the nagging sensation that the threat wasn't over. Then, on a Friday afternoon, Art received a package at his apartment. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Art and Emily walking to school that morning, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. Written on the back in neat handwriting. The pattern always completes itself. Art's blood turned to ice. He immediately called Agent Morrison, but she was in a meeting. He called Curtis, who told him to stay inside and lock the doors while he sent patrol units to Art's apartment. Art looked at Emily, who was doing homework at the kitchen table, oblivious to the threat that had just been delivered to their door. His protective instincts warred with his analytical mind. The photograph was a message. The collective knew where they lived, knew their routines, and wanted Art to know they were still watching. But it was also a mistake, because in sending the photograph, they'd revealed that they were still actively monitoring Art and Emily, which meant they were still planning something. And if Art could figure out what that something was, he could stop it before it happened. He pulled out his laptop and began analyzing everything he knew about the collective's operations. Rose had said Emily was the 7th perfect candidate. 7 children for the next phase of their evolution. But only 6 children had been in Rose's house when the FBI raided. Where was the 7th? Art went through the files Agent Morrison had shared with him, cross-referencing the children rescued from the Virginia compound with the names Rose had provided. Every child was accounted for except one, a 12-year-old boy named Orlando Cooley, who Rose had recruited 3 years ago. According to the records, Orlando had graduated from the compound 6 months earlier, transferred to something called the implementation phase. But there were no details about what that meant or where he'd gone. Art called Morrison back, leaving an urgent message about Orlando Cooley. Then he did something he'd been avoiding. He visited Rose McClure in prison. Rose looked haggard and aged, the elegant woman from 2 weeks ago now hollow-eyed and broken. She sat across from Art in the prison's visiting room, separated by bulletproof glass. "They sent you a message," Rose said before Art could speak. It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "Because Tyler Miles never leaves loose ends. If you're still breathing, it's because he wants something from you." "What happened to Orlando Cooley?" Rose's face went ashen. "You found out about him. Answer the question." Orlando was the first perfect success. The only child who completed the entire transformation process without psychological damage. The collective moved him into deep cover 6 months ago. He's somewhere out there, living a normal life, waiting for activation. Activation for what? Rose leaned closer to the glass. Arthur, the collective's endgame isn't just recruitment. It's infiltration. Orlando has been placed in a position where, when the time comes, he can make decisions that affect millions of lives. And there are others like him, adults who went through the program as children and are now embedded in critical infrastructure. Art felt dizzy. Where is Orlando Cooley right now? I don't know. That information was kept compartmentalized. Only Tyler Miles and the core leadership know the identities and locations of their implanted agents. Then how do I find him? Rose smiled sadly. You don't. But Emily can. Art stared at Rose through the glass partition, his pulse hammering. What does Emily have to do with Orlando Cooley? Emily's gift, that multidimensional pattern recognition I told you about, it works on people too. She can analyze behavior, microexpressions, speech patterns, and identify when someone has been through collective conditioning. It's unconscious for her, an instinct. That's why Tyler Miles wants her so badly. She's not just a potential recruit. She's the only person who can identify all of the collective's embedded agents. Art's mind raced through the implications. If the collective had spent decades placing conditioned individuals in positions of power, and Emily could identify them, she became both the ultimate weapon and the ultimate target. The photograph wasn't a threat, Art realized. It was reconnaissance. They're planning to take her. Exactly. And they will, Arthur. The collective has resources and patience that exceed anything you can imagine. Your only chance is to find Tyler Miles first and eliminate his ability to give the activation order. How do I do that? Rose pulled a small piece of paper from her pocket. She'd been allowed pen and paper for legal notes. She pressed it against the glass. On it was written a name, Daniel Cortez. Daniel works in Miles' technology company as a systems administrator. He's also my nephew, Walter's sister's son. He was recruited into the collective as an adult, but he never fully accepted their ideology. If anyone can help you get access to Miles' location and operations, it's Daniel. Art photographed the paper with his phone. Why are you helping me now? Because Emily reminded me what it means to be human. And because Tyler Miles killed my husband. Art's head snapped up. You said Walter died of cancer. He did, but the collective expedited it. Walter started having doubts about their methods, wanted to scale back the child recruitment. Tyler poisoned him, made it look like cancer progression. I found out 2 years ago when I discovered documents Walter had hidden. By then, I was too deep to escape. But you're not. You can still stop them. Art left the prison and drove straight to the FBI field office, where Agent Morrison had finally returned his calls. We've been trying to locate Tyler Miles through financial tracking, she explained, pulling up surveillance reports. But his movements are erratic and his resources are essentially unlimited. We know he's funneling money to shell corporations, but we can't prove illegal activity without direct evidence. I have a lead, Art said, explaining about Daniel Cortez. Morrison ran a background check. Daniel Cortez, age 34, works for Miles Technologies in their data security division. No criminal record. Fairly unremarkable life, except... She pulled up a photograph. He was flagged 3 years ago for accessing encrypted files outside his clearance level. Internal investigation found nothing, but our analyst noted the access patterns were consistent with someone gathering intelligence. He's gathering evidence against the collective from inside the company. Maybe. Or he's a loyalist doing counterintelligence. Morrison studied Art carefully. If we approach him officially, he'll shut down or alert Miles. You want to make contact yourself. Can you get me background on him? Habits, routines, vulnerabilities? Art, what you're suggesting is dangerous. If Daniel is loyal to the collective, he could lead you into a trap. And if he's not, he might be our only chance to stop Miles before he activates his embedded agents or takes Emily. Morrison pulled up more files. Daniel Cortez lives alone in an apartment downtown. He plays chess at a local club every Thursday evening. Interesting coincidence. You're a chess instructor. Art felt the pieces sliding into place. What club? Metropolitan Chess Society. Members only, but I can get you a guest pass. That Thursday evening, Art entered the Metropolitan Chess Society with his heart pounding. The club occupied the second floor of an old building, its walls lined with photographs of chess masters and tournament champions. 20 tables filled the main room, each hosting games in various stages of completion. Daniel Cortez sat at a corner table, playing against himself, analyzing a complex position on the board. He was a thin man with dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses, his fingers moving pieces with quick, nervous energy. Art recognized the game. It was a famous match between Kasparov and Deep Blue, the moment when artificial intelligence first defeated a world champion. "Mind if I join you?" Art asked, sitting across from Daniel without waiting for permission. Daniel looked up, his eyes sharp and assessing. "This is a private analysis. I know the game. You're trying to figure out where Deep Blue's programming influenced its decision tree, whether the machine made a choice or just followed optimized algorithms." Art reset the pieces to 3 moves earlier. "But you're asking the wrong question." "What's the right question?" "Whether the outcome would have been different if Kasparov had understood his opponent wasn't thinking like a human." Art moved a piece. "Sometimes the best strategy is to accept that your opponent operates on entirely different principles." Daniel stared at the board, then at Art. "Who are you?" "Art Conrad. My daughter was almost recruited by the collective. Rose McClure is my ex-mother-in-law." Daniel's face went pale. He looked around the room quickly, then leaned forward. "Are you insane? You can't just walk up to me and— Your aunt is in federal prison. Tyler Miles is somewhere overseas planning his next move, and I need your help to stop him before he hurts more children." "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. You've been gathering evidence against Miles for years. Rose told me you never fully accepted the collective's ideology. You've been waiting for someone to help you take them down." Daniel's hands trembled as he moved a chess piece aimlessly. "If I help you, they'll kill me. If you don't, they'll keep killing children. How many deaths are you willing to accept to save yourself?" The question hung between them. Finally, Daniel said quietly, "Not here. Follow me in 20 minutes. There's a parking garage 3 blocks north. Level 4, northwest corner." Daniel left. Art waited exactly 20 minutes, his mind running through possibilities and contingencies. This could be a trap. Daniel could be loyal to the collective. But Art had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts said Daniel wanted out. The parking garage was nearly empty on level 4. Art found Daniel standing by a concrete pillar, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. "I joined the collective when I was 22, Daniel said without preamble. "Uncle Walter recruited me. Said I had a gift for systems thinking, that I could help change the world. For a while, I believed him. Then I started seeing the files, the children who didn't survive the transformation process, the families destroyed, the deaths covered up." He took a long drag on his cigarette. "I tried to leave. They made it clear that wasn't an option. So I stayed and gathered evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "Financial records proving money laundering. Communications showing the network of embedded agents. Medical files documenting the children who died during conditioning. Everything needed to dismantle the entire operation." Daniel met Art's eyes. "I've been waiting for someone with enough motivation and capability to use it. I think you're that person." "Where's the evidence?" "Encrypted and distributed across multiple secure servers. I'm the only one with the access keys. If anything happens to me, it's lost forever. Then we need to get it to the FBI before—" "No," Daniel interrupted. "You don't understand. The collective has people inside the FBI, inside law enforcement, at every level. If we go official, the evidence disappears, and we end up dead. This has to be handled differently." Art's analytical mind processed the implications. "You want to leverage the evidence yourself. Threaten to release it publicly unless Miles backs down. Not threaten. Actually release it. Everything. Flood the media, the internet, every journalist and news organization simultaneously. Make it impossible to suppress or deny. That's a massive data leak. It'll ruin innocent people's lives along with the guilty ones." "Innocent people are already dying," Daniel said flatly. "I stopped caring about collateral damage when I saw the files of 8-year-olds who killed themselves after failed conditioning. We end this, whatever it takes." Art thought about Emily sleeping safely in his apartment, protected by federal marshals. Thought about the 19 children rescued from the Virginia compound who would need years of therapy. Thought about Orlando Cooley and others like him, ticking time bombs waiting for activation. "What do you need from me?" Art asked. "Tyler Miles is paranoid about digital security. He keeps a physical backup of the collective's core operational files in a safe at his primary residence in the Cayman Islands. If we can get those files and combine them with my digital evidence, we'll have everything needed to destroy the organization completely. Breaking into a billionaire's home in another country. That's impossible. Daniel smiled grimly. Not if you know his security protocols. I designed them. Over the next 72 hours, Art's life became a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Daniel provided detailed schematics of Tyler Miles' Cayman Islands estate, including security camera positions, guard rotations, and the location of the safe. Art studied everything with the same intensity he'd once applied to analyzing criminal psychology cases. The plan was audacious and illegal. They would fly to the Caymans, infiltrate Miles' estate during a charity gala he was hosting, access his study while he was occupied with guests, and extract the files from his safe. Then they'd flee the country before Miles even realized what had been taken. Agent Morrison found out about the plan when Art came to her requesting information on international travel. You're planning to commit burglary in a foreign country, she said flatly. Art, I can't sanction this. I could lose my badge. Then don't sanction it. Pretend you don't know. But give me 3 days before you report it. And if you get caught, then I get caught trying to protect my daughter from a criminal organization that has embedded agents in God knows how many positions of power. I can live with that. Morrison studied him for a long moment. You were always too smart for your own good. Fine. 3 days. But Art, if you die doing this, I'm going to be very angry with you. Art arranged for Emily to stay with Curtis and his wife, telling his daughter he needed to travel for a few days to help the FBI with the investigation. Emily hugged him tightly at Curtis's front door. Be careful, Daddy, she said. I can feel something wrong in the pattern, like pieces on the board that don't belong there. What do you mean? Emily frowned, struggling to articulate something she sensed but couldn't fully explain. There's someone close to you who isn't what they seem. Be careful who you trust. Art thought about Daniel Cortez, about Rose McClure, about everyone involved in this tangled web. I'll be careful. I love you. I love you too. The flight to Grand Cayman took 6 hours. Art and Daniel arrived separately, staying at different hotels, communicating only through encrypted messages. The charity gala at Miles' estate was scheduled for Saturday evening, a fundraiser for educational advancement, grotesquely ironic given Miles' actual activities. Daniel had obtained invitations through his position at Miles Technologies, registering Art as a potential major donor under a false identity. Art wore an expensive suit that Daniel had purchased, carried forged credentials, and tried to look like he belonged among billionaires and their associates. Tyler Miles' estate sprawled across 5 acres of waterfront property, a modernist palace of glass and steel. Security was extensive but predictable. Guards at the entrance and perimeter, cameras covering the grounds, electronic locks on interior doors. Daniel had given Art a device that would temporarily loop the security footage, creating blind spots lasting exactly 90 seconds. Art moved through the crowd of wealthy donors, champagne glass in hand, studying the estate's layout and confirming Daniel's information. Miles himself held court in the main ballroom, a handsome man in his 50s with silver hair and a politician's smile. Art watched him charm donors, shake hands, and project the image of a responsible philanthropist. The monster behind the mask was invisible to everyone but Art. At 9:47 p.m., Daniel created a distraction, triggering the fire alarm in the East Wing. As staff and guests evacuated that section, Art slipped away through a service corridor, heading to Miles' private study on the 2nd floor. The study was exactly as Daniel had described, a room of dark wood and leather, dominated by an antique desk and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. The safe was hidden behind a painting of a chessboard, because of course it was. Everything with the collective came back to games of strategy. Art activated the security loop device and removed the painting. The safe was biometric, thumbprint, and retinal scan. But Daniel had planned for this, providing Art with a fake fingerprint and contact lens printed with Miles' biometric data, obtained from medical records Daniel had hacked months ago. The safe opened with a soft click. Inside were 3 leather-bound ledgers, several USB drives, and a handgun. Art photographed everything with his phone, then carefully removed the ledgers and USB drives, replacing them with identical dummy versions Daniel had prepared. If Miles checked the safe, everything would look normal until he tried to access the actual files. Art was resealing the safe when he heard a voice behind him. "I have to admit, this is impressive. I didn't expect you to move so quickly." Art turned to find Tyler Miles standing in the study doorway, his politician's smile replaced with cold amusement. Behind him stood 2 security guards with weapons drawn. "Daniel Cortez sends his regards," Miles said. "Did you really think my own systems administrator could betray me without me knowing? Daniel has been feeding me information about your plans since the moment you contacted him. Everything you've done, every step you've taken, I've been watching." Art's mind raced, analyzing his options. He was trapped in a room on the 2nd floor with armed guards blocking the only exit. The security loop would expire in 30 seconds. Even if he could fight his way past Miles and his guards, he'd never make it off the estate. But Art had spent his career studying patterns, understanding behavior, predicting outcomes. And something about Miles' confidence felt wrong. Too scripted, too performative. "If you've been watching everything," Art said slowly, "then you know I photographed the contents of your safe before I took anything. Those photos are set to auto-upload to cloud storage if I don't cancel the transmission in." He checked his watch. "For minutes." Miles' smile faltered slightly. "You're bluffing." "Am I? You've studied my psychological profile. You know I'm a strategic thinker. Did you really believe I'd walk into your estate without a backup plan?" Miles pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. His expression darkened. "Shut down all wireless transmission from this room," he ordered his guards. But Art was already moving, grabbing the handgun from the still-open safe and pointing it not at Miles or the guards, but at the leather-bound ledgers he'd placed on the desk. "The ledgers are originals," Art said. "Irreplaceable documentation of 50 years of collective operations. If you kill me, I drop the gun. If I drop the gun, it discharges into the ledgers, destroying them. And the digital copies upload to the internet in 3 minutes, 20 seconds. Miles' face went white with rage. "You wouldn't dare. Try me. I've spent the past 3 weeks learning exactly how much evil your organization has done. Burning these ledgers would be worth dying for." The standoff held for 10 seconds that felt like hours. Then Miles lowered his phone. "What do you want?" "Simple. You dismantle the collective. You provide the FBI with locations of every embedded agent, every facility, every member. You destroy the conditioning protocols. And you leave my daughter alone for the rest of her life. And if I refuse, then the world learns everything. Every name, every crime, every dead child. Your empire collapses, your associates go to prison, and you spend the rest of your life running from extradition orders." Miles' jaw clenched. "You're making a mistake. The collective serves a greater purpose. We're trying to advance human potential. By murdering children and creating brainwashed sleeper agents? That's not advancement. That's evil." "You're thinking too small," Miles said, his voice taking on the same evangelical tone Rose had used. "Humanity is stagnant, regressive. We're trying to create a better future. By destroying the present? No. This ends now. Make your choice." Miles looked at Art with something like respect. "You know what I see when I look at you? The exact qualities we screen for in collective recruits. Strategic thinking, psychological resilience, willingness to risk everything for what you believe. You would have made an excellent member." "I would rather die." Miles laughed without humor. "Yes, you probably would. That's why people like you are dangerous to people like us. You can't be bought or manipulated. You operate on principles." He gestured to his guards. "Lower your weapons." The guards hesitated, then complied. Miles walked slowly to his desk and sat down, suddenly looking every one of his 57 years. "I'll give you what you want," he said quietly. "The locations, the names, everything. Not because of your threats, but because—" He paused, struggling with something. "Because you're right. We've become what we claim to be fighting against. The collective started with noble intentions, but somewhere along the way, we forgot that intentions don't justify atrocities." Art didn't lower the gun. "I need proof of your cooperation. Now." Miles opened his laptop and began typing. Within minutes, he'd sent encrypted files to an email address Art provided. Agent Morrison's secure FBI account. Personnel records, facility locations, financial transfers, everything needed to dismantle the entire global network. "The activation codes for our embedded agents," Miles said, pulling a USB drive from his desk drawer. "I'm the only person with access to these. Without them, the agents remain dormant. They'll never even know they were supposed to be activated." Art took the USB drive carefully. How many embedded agents are there? 47 worldwide. Politicians, corporate executives, military officers, judges. They were conditioned as children and placed in their positions over the past 20 years. Most don't even remember their time in the program. The memories were suppressed until activation. How do we deprogram them? You can't. Not fully. But without activation, they're just ordinary people with gaps in their childhood memories. They'll live normal lives, never knowing what they were supposed to become. Art backed toward the study's second exit, a door leading to a rear staircase that Daniel had identified. If you're lying, if any of this is misdirection, I'm not lying. Miles looked genuinely defeated. Take the ledgers, take the drives, take everything. Destroy us. Maybe humanity doesn't need the collective's version of advancement. Maybe you're right that we should evolve naturally, even if it takes longer. Art descended the rear staircase and exited through the estate's service entrance, his heart hammering. He didn't breathe easily until he was 3 blocks away, sitting in a rented car, checking to confirm that the files Miles had sent were genuine. They were. Everything. Decades of criminal conspiracy, documented in excruciating detail. Art called Agent Morrison. I have everything. The whole network. You'll want to coordinate with international law enforcement for simultaneous arrests. This is going to be the biggest takedown since Rico. Art, where the hell are you? Cayman Islands. But I'll be wheels up in 2 hours. I have a daughter to get home to. The coordinated raids began at dawn. FBI, Interpol, and local law enforcement in 14 countries moved simultaneously, arresting collective members and seizing facilities. The operation was the culmination of decades of criminal activity finally brought to light. Daniel Cortez, it turned out, had been genuinely on Art's side. The story Miles told about Daniel betraying Art was a last-ditch manipulation attempt that failed because Art had already taken precautions. Daniel had provided Miles with false information while helping Art plan the real infiltration. Art returned to find Emily safe and happy at Curtis's house, playing chess with Curtis's teenage son and winning handily. She looked up when Art entered and smiled. "You fixed the pattern," she said simply. "I can feel it. The wrong pieces are gone from the board." Art hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of the past 3 weeks finally lifting. "We fixed it together, sweetheart. You warned me about the threat. You helped identify what Rose was doing. You're a hero. I'm just a kid who wants to play chess and eat mac and cheese." "Then that's exactly who you get to be." The legal proceedings took months. Rose McClure received a reduced sentence in exchange for her cooperation, 12 years in a minimum security facility. Tyler Miles was extradited from the Caymans and charged with conspiracy, kidnapping, and murder. His trial would be one of the most publicized in decades. Darlene slowly rebuilt her relationship with Emily, attending family therapy and working to understand how her mother had manipulated both of them. She apologized to Art repeatedly, which he accepted with grace. They would never be married again, but they could be partners in raising their daughter. The 47 embedded agents were quietly identified and offered deprogramming therapy. Some accepted, others chose to live with their memory gaps, never knowing what they'd narrowly avoided becoming. Art returned to teaching chess, but he also began consulting with the FBI on cult deprogramming and child protection protocols. His expertise, combined with Emily's unusual abilities, had helped dismantle one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in modern history. 6 months after the Virginia compound raid, Art received a letter from Rose McClure. It was short and handwritten. "Arthur, I read that 47 people were saved from activation because of what you did. I wanted you to know that number doesn't capture the full impact. Each of those 47 people will go on to have children, build careers, create things, love people, all because you refused to let them be used as weapons. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to atone for the children I hurt. I know I can never make it right. But I wanted to thank you for showing me that being special doesn't require transformation. It requires being human. Rose." Art filed the letter away and turned his attention to the chessboard in front of him, where Emily was playing against herself, working through a complex endgame position. "Daddy," she said without looking up, "do you think Grandma Rose will be okay? I think she'll spend a long time being not okay, and then gradually learn to live with what she's done. That's as close to okay as someone like her can get. That's sad. Yes, but sadness is part of being human. Joy, sadness, love, loss, we get all of it. That's what the collective never understood. You can't optimize away pain without losing what makes us who we are. Emily moved a chess piece, achieving checkmate against her own position. I'm glad we get to be human then, even when it's sad. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. Art watched his daughter reset the chess pieces and begin a new game. The patterns would continue, life's endless complexity, its challenges and triumphs. But they would face those patterns together, as themselves, unmodified and unmanipulated. Just a father and daughter playing chess. Just human. And that was more than enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.